wanted to feel the fear. If someone had tried to make us admit it, we might have denied it. But deep down, we were all searching for excitement. When Ethan said, "This will be a night to remember," Sophia and I exchanged smiles. Walking in that dark forest, far from the city lights and lit only by the moon, felt like an adventure at the time. Sophia carried a flashlight, its shaky beam casting even more frightening shadows among the trees. Ethan, on the other hand, had his phone out with a map open, cracking jokes about where we were heading. "We won't get lost. It's that simple," he said, but the more I knew him, the less I trusted him. As for me, I was focused on the faint rustling of leaves behind us. Maybe it was just the wind, or perhaps an animal. Yet, something inside me felt uneasy. I whispered to myself, "Jack, stop being ridiculous," but I couldn't shake the feeling. "Shall we tell some scary stories?" Ethan asked suddenly. Sophia laughed nervously. "You don't need to scare me more. I'm already on edge." Ethan seized the opportunity and began narrating a creepy story he was clearly making up on the spot. While we pretended to be engrossed in his tale, all of us fell silent. The darkness of the forest seemed to press down on us, and apart from the whispering leaves, everything else was eerily quiet. The air was so heavy that even breathing felt unsettling. After a while, Sophia's flashlight flickered and died. "Oh no, not now." Ethan turned on his phone's flashlight, but the forest darkness seemed to swallow the faint beam. "I've got something," he said, rummaging through his bag. But just then, a sharp, stomach-turning smell hit us. Sophia pinched her nose and asked, "What is that?" Ethan tried to chuckle, probably a dead animal. The smell grew stronger as we went on, and finally we saw them. Bodies, hanging from tree branches, 3 of them swaying gently in the wind. Their clothes were torn, their faces mutilated beyond recognition. Sophia covered her mouth with her hands to stifle a scream. Ethan's phone slipped from his hand and hit the ground, just as we were about to turn and run. "Someone's there," Sophia whispered. Ethan fumbled to turn off the flashlight, but it was too late. We had all seen the figure, a tall, dark silhouette moving through the trees toward us. "Run!" I yelled, and in that moment, a terrifying chase began. We started running, gasping for breath. The darkness in the forest seemed to grow thicker, and we had no idea where we were going. Branches cracked beneath my feet, and I could hear the heavy footsteps of the man behind us. Sophia was in the lead, with Ethan right behind me. "Ethan, move faster," I shouted, but he was already out of breath. "I'm going as fast as I can," he replied, his voice trembling with fear and panic. We were trying to come up with a plan when a shadow appeared among the trees. The man had found us, and now he was closer. The sight of the axe in his hand sent shivers down my spine. Grabbing Ethan by the arm, I shouted, "Run, now!" Sophia was in the lead. I was behind her, and Ethan was at the back. But after a while, Ethan's steps began to falter. His breathing was much faster than ours. "I can't keep going," he shouted. At that moment, I turned around and saw Ethan trip over a root and fall to the ground. "Ethan," I yelled, wanting to go back, but Sophia held me back. "No, Jack, it's too late. He's here." The man was walking toward Ethan. Ethan was on the ground, struggling to get up. "Jack, help me," he screamed, but there was nothing I could do. My eyes filled with tears, and my heart was pounding like it was going to burst out of my chest. The man raised the axe high. Watching that moment was an endless agony. Ethan's final scream echoed in my ears. That horrifying scene froze in my mind. Sophia pulled me along, forcing me to keep running, but part of my soul stayed there with Ethan. In that moment, I felt not only fear, but also overwhelming guilt. I couldn't save him. As we kept running, Ethan's scream echoed in my mind, turning into a nightmare that would haunt me for the rest of my life. When Sophia and I finally reached the clearing, we had a moment to catch our breath. What we thought would be an old cabin turned out to be a broken down, abandoned RV. Our eyes locked. "We can hide here," I said. Sophia nodded, but her face still showed the overwhelming fear she felt. We entered the RV. It was dark and reeked of dampness. Looking out the window, I noticed Sophia's hands trembling. "Do you think Ethan?" She started to ask, but she couldn't finish her sentence. Tears rolled down her face. Just then, the sound of snapping twigs in the forest pierced the silence. The man was still after us. My heart started racing. I whispered to Sophia, "Stay quiet. Don't move." The footsteps drew closer to the RV, and then a shadow passed by the window. We held our breath. As we waited to see if he would come inside, the rusty door of the RV creaked slightly. Sophia's eyes were wide with terror. I was holding nothing but a stick, and I knew it was useless. What could I possibly do with it? Just as the door hinges began to groan open, the sound of an engine roared outside. I looked at Sophia. She had heard it too. Bright headlights briefly lit up the interior of the RV. A loud, commanding voice called out from outside, "Hey, who's there?" The voice was so strong and authoritative that the man chasing us suddenly hesitated. His shadow moved away from the window. Flashlight beams swept through the forest, and the engine's hum grew louder. Summoning our courage, Sophia and I stepped outside. An SUV had its headlights pointed toward the forest. A burly, bearded man stepped out of the vehicle, holding a rifle. "What are you kids doing here? Are you all right?" I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. Through her sobs, Sophia managed to say, "Someone's after us." The man immediately gripped his rifle and marched toward the darkness behind us. That night, thanks to this stranger, we survived. He drove us to town and handed us over to the police. But the terror of that forest and the loss of Ethan would never leave us. As we reached the city lights, I knew our lives would never be the same again.